Hey there. I know you're out there. Maybe lying in the dark, maybe sitting alone with this phone. Wherever you are, I want to tell you something. You don't have to be okay. I know everyone keeps asking, "How are you?" And you keep saying, "Fine," but honestly, sometimes inside you feel like you're drowning in your own life. I get that feeling. The feeling like you're living someone else's life, like you're running on a treadmill and don't know when you're allowed to stop. Yesterday, I got a message from a friend. They wrote, "Why do I have everything but still feel like something's missing?" You know what? I've heard this question hundreds of times. And every time I hear it, I remember myself a few years ago. I was sitting just like you are right now, searching for something on the internet at midnight, hoping to find an answer to this hollow feeling in my chest. Then, I stumbled across a story about this guy from way back, like 2,500 years ago, who also couldn't sleep like us. His name was Siddhartha. People usually call him Buddha. Sounds all fancy and mystical, but really he was just a regular person looking for answers. He was born into a well-off family. Like a lot of people we know, nice house, good car, stable job. But every night he'd ask himself, is this it? Is this all there is? Sound familiar? That feeling like you're living in a movie where you're not the director. Then, one night, he decided to leave everything behind to find the answer. Sounds crazy, right? But maybe it was the craziest thing he ever did, and also the smartest. He traveled everywhere, learned from all kinds of teachers, tried every method imaginable. Sometimes he'd fast until he nearly died. Sometimes he'd meditate until he passed out. But you know what? The answer didn't come from trying so hard. The answer came when he sat down and said, "Okay, I'm done searching." Sounds backwards, doesn't it? But that was exactly when everything shifted. When he stopped running after something, when he stopped trying to become someone else, that's when he finally saw himself. Last week, someone messaged me about a similar moment. They were sitting in a coffee shop, stressed about a deadline, and suddenly just stopped and breathed. Just that. Just breathed. And for the first time in forever, they felt peaceful. It was like I remembered who I am, they wrote. That's exactly what I want to share with you tonight. Not some high-level knowledge, not some mystical secret. Just simple stories about remembering yourself. I'm going to tell you about ordinary people like us, how they found their way back to feeling at home in their own hearts. No need to go anywhere far. No need to completely change your life. Just remember. You can lie down comfortably. You can close your eyes. I'll be here with you all night. like a friend sitting beside you, telling you stories until you drift off to sleep with a smile. Because you know what? What you're looking for, it never actually left you. It's just waiting for you to stop looking outside and start looking within. Ready for a story? The first one is about an invisible backpack that all of us are carrying on our shoulders. Have you ever noticed that we all carry an invisible backpack? I'm serious about this. Right now, feel your shoulders for a moment. Do they feel heavy? That's not from your sitting posture. I remember the first time someone showed me this. I was sitting in my office, shoulders stiff as stones after a stressful week of work. Then a colleague said, "Do you know what you're carrying on your shoulders?" "Nothing at all," I replied. That's exactly the problem. You've been carrying it all week without realizing. Turns out, from early morning, we start stuffing things into that invisible backpack. Unanswered emails, into the backpack. Stressful meetings, into the backpack. Negative news, online, into the backpack. Harsh words from the boss, into the backpack. By evening, we're carrying an entire warehouse of worries, anger, and pressure. I once had a friend who worked as a nurse. She told me about a night shift at the hospital. I was pushing a wheelchair for an elderly man, and he suddenly said, "Young lady, can you put down those heavy things? I can see you're very tired." My friend was startled. The old man couldn't see the invisible backpack, but he could feel its weight. I asked him, "What do you mean?" He replied, "What you're carrying doesn't belong to you. Leave it here and go home." That night, on her way home, my friend did the strangest thing in her life. She pulled over, got out of the car, and imagined taking off the backpack and setting it on the ground. My shoulders felt light immediately, like I had just taken off a coat weighing dozens of pounds. You know what's most interesting? The next day, the problems at the hospital were still there. Emails still needed answering. Work was still stressful. But she was no longer carrying them inside her body. That was the first lesson Prince Siddhartha learned. Not about avoiding problems, but about not letting problems ride on your back. Try this with me right now. Relax your shoulders a bit. Imagine you're taking off a heavy backpack from your shoulders. You don't need to solve any problems. Just set them down so your shoulders can rest. Can you feel the difference? The second story I want to tell you is about something we all fear: emotions. Last week I met a young man in a coffee shop. He had been sitting there since morning, constantly staring at his laptop but not typing a single word. Finally he asked me, "How do you stop feeling sad?" Does this question sound familiar? We often think negative emotions are enemies to be defeated. Sadness is bad. Anger is bad. Worry is bad. We try to push them away, hide them, or pretend they don't exist. But it turns out, we've been wrong from the beginning. I told that young man about an ancient Zen master. One day, a student asked the master, "Master, how do I never feel angry?" The master smiled. "I will show you how to welcome anger like welcoming an honored guest." An honored guest? The student was surprised. Exactly, the master nodded. When guests come to your house, do you chase them away? Or do you invite them in, make tea, and listen to what they want? But master, anger causes me suffering. It's not anger that causes you suffering, the master said gently. It's your trying to chase it away that causes suffering. This story completely changed how the young man in the coffee shop viewed his emotions. He began to try inviting his sadness to sit down instead of trying to push it away. "Okay, sadness," he said in his mind. "What do you want? Why are you here?" And do you know what happened? The sadness began to talk to him. It spoke about missing his ex-girlfriend, about the fear of not being loved, about the desire to be understood and accepted. For the first time in my life, I understood what my sadness wanted, he shared. It wasn't an enemy. It was a part of me that needed care. Have you ever tried talking to your emotions? Not analyzing them, but really listening to what they want to say. Sometimes, negative emotions are just the soul's way of getting our attention. Like a child crying, not to be annoying, but because they need a hug. Take a deep breath and feel if there are any emotions in your heart waiting to be heard. Don't be afraid. They are part of you. And like every other part of you, they need to be loved too. The next story is about something we do constantly without realizing, living in the future. Yesterday, I went to the supermarket with a friend. The whole way there, she kept saying, "I have to buy this, that. Oh, I still need to remember to go to the bank. This afternoon I have to call Mum. Tomorrow evening there's a meeting." I stopped and asked, "Do you realize where you are?" She looked at me like I was asking a silly question. At the supermarket, where else? No, I shook my head. Your body is at the supermarket, but your mind is tomorrow, next week, next month. You're living in the future. That's the story of most of us. We plan tomorrow while eating breakfast today. We worry about the afternoon meeting while showering in the morning. We live like time travelers, constantly jumping back and forth between past and future. And then one day, we ask ourselves, where did my life go? There's a wonderful Zen story about this. A monk was walking along the road when he met a man running hurriedly. "Where are you running to?" the monk asked. "I'm chasing happiness," the man replied without stopping. The monk smiled and called out, "What if happiness is chasing you?" Have you ever thought that maybe happiness is chasing you, but you're running so fast it can't catch up? I have a friend who works in tech. He told me about a morning that changed his life. He was hurriedly getting ready for work, mentally listing hundreds of tasks for the day, when his 5-year-old daughter ran up. "Daddy, the flowers in the garden are so beautiful." "Daddy knows, sweetheart. Play by yourself. Daddy's busy," he replied mechanically. But the little girl kept pulling his hand. "Look, Daddy. That yellow flower looks like the sun." At that moment, something in him suddenly stopped. He looked at his daughter, sparkling eyes, bright smile, tiny hand, pointing toward the flower garden. "For the first time in a long while, I truly saw my child," he shared. "Not as a task to be completed, but as a miracle happening before my eyes." He was 15 minutes late that day, but he said those were the most precious 15 minutes of the year. Because he had truly lived in those 15 minutes, instead of running through them to get to something else. I realized how many wonderful moments I had missed because I kept thinking happiness was ahead, he said. Turns out it was right here, in every moment I truly lived. Right now, are you truly living? Or is part of you somewhere else, worrying about tomorrow, regretting yesterday, or simply turned off and running on autopilot? Try this. Feel the air touching your skin. Hear the sounds around you. Feel the weight of your body. This is life happening right here, right now. The next story I want to tell you is about the perfection of imperfection. Last week I met a young woman at a coffee shop. She was crying because she had just been rejected in a job interview. "I prepared so carefully," she sobbed. "Why am I still not good enough?" I looked out the window and saw an old tree. Its trunk was crooked, with many scars, some branches broken. But it was beautiful in an indescribable way, a beauty that perfectly planted garden trees could never have. "Do you see that tree?" I pointed outside. "It's not perfect by any standard, but it has something that perfect trees don't have, a story." The Japanese have a beautiful word, wabi-sabi. It means finding beauty in imperfection, in cracks, in the marks of time. I told her about a pottery master. He had a teacup made from rough clay, uneven, with a small crack running from the rim to the bottom. A student asked, "Master, why don't you use more beautiful cups?" The master smiled. "This is the most beautiful one. But it has a crack. That crack is what makes it beautiful. It shows the cup has lived, has experienced, has its own story." Then the master said something I'll never forget. "If we only love what's perfect, we'll never be able to love anything. Because perfection doesn't exist in life." The girl in the coffee shop quietly wiped her tears. Then she asked, "So my failures are also a kind of beauty?" "Not a kind," I replied. "That's the only real beauty that truly exists. The beauty of a person who has lived, tried, fallen, and stood up again." Have you ever thought about your flaws this way? Those failures, those scars of the heart, those moments you felt not good enough, maybe they're not things to hide, but the brushstrokes that make up the unique painting of your life. Right now, with everything you consider imperfect about yourself, you're still a masterpiece. Like that old tree, beautiful not despite its flaws, but because of them. I want to tell you about an amazing discovery, that we're not as alone as we think. Once I was sitting on an airplane, feeling lonely among hundreds of strangers. Suddenly, I remembered a lesson from science. The air I was breathing was the same air that millions of others were also breathing. The oxygen entering my lungs could be oxygen from trees in Brazil, from seaweed in the Pacific, from the breath of a sleeping child in Paris. Suddenly, the feeling of loneliness disappeared. I was no longer a separate individual, but part of a great living flow. Buddhism has a beautiful word for this: interbeing. It means we exist not as separate islands, but like waves in the same ocean. I have a friend who's a doctor. She told me about an elderly patient who was dying. The old man said, "Doctor, I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid I'll become nothing." My friend sat down beside the bed and said gently, "Sir, do you see that tree outside? In autumn the leaves fall, but do the leaves disappear? They become soil, nourishing the tree's roots. Then in spring, the tree sprouts again. The old leaves didn't disappear, they just changed form. You're the same way," she continued. "You've lived in every breath of your children and grandchildren. You've lived in every good memory you've left behind. You've lived in every lesson you've taught others. How could you disappear?" The old man smiled one last time. "You're right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just changing clothes." This story changed how I viewed death, life, and the connections between us. We're not separate points in space, but musical notes in the symphony of life. Right now, your breath is connecting you to every living being on the planet. Your heart beats to the rhythm that billions of other hearts are also beating. You're never truly alone. When you feel lonely, remember this. You're part of something greater, more beautiful, and more eternal than any fear you might have. Now, I want to share with you about a special kind of courage, the courage to be vulnerable. Last month, I attended a stress support group meeting. There was a big, strong-looking guy who suddenly broke down crying, "I'm so tired. Tired of pretending to be strong." The whole room fell silent. Then slowly, others began to share. One person talked about fear of failure, another about feeling unworthy. For the first time, they took off their "I'm fine" masks and allowed themselves to be real. Something miraculous happened. Instead of becoming weaker, they became stronger. Instead of being looked down upon, they were loved more. There's a quote by Leonard Cohen I love. "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." The moments we feel broken might be exactly when light finds its way into our hearts. We're not strong despite our vulnerability, but because of it. I remember the first time I dared to admit to a friend that I was depressed. I was afraid she would avoid me. Instead, she hugged me tight and said, "Thank you for trusting me with this truth. Now I truly know who you are," she said. "And I love you more." That's when I understood. We're not loved, despite having perfect parts, but loved because of our imperfect parts. The cracks in our souls are exactly where love seeps in. Do you dare let someone see the cracks in your heart? Dare to admit that sometimes you're not okay too, that you need hugs too, that you need to hear everything will be all right. That's not weakness. That's the greatest courage in the world. The final story I want to share in this part is about a miracle we perform every day without knowing it, the miracle of forgiveness. I had a friend who carried resentment for 10 years. She was betrayed by her lover and couldn't forget. Every day, she spent at least an hour thinking about it, being angry, planning revenge, by living really successfully. "I will never forgive him," she would often say. Until one day, she visited her seriously ill grandmother. The old woman took her hand and said, "Dear, I see you carrying a heavy stone in your heart. It hurts you, but you won't let it go." "What do you mean, Grandma?" "Forgiveness isn't for other people, dear. Forgiveness is for yourself." "But Grandma, I can't forgive what he did." The old woman smiled. "You don't need to forgive what others did. You just need to forgive yourself for carrying this pain too long." Those words were like lightning. My friend realized that for 10 years, she hadn't punished the person who hurt her. She had only punished herself. That night, she did something she had never done. She wrote a letter to herself. My dear, I'm sorry for letting you carry this pain so long. I'm sorry for not protecting you from suffering. Now, I want you to be free. She read the letter and cried like rain. Not crying from anger, but from relief. Like a heavy stone had just been removed from her chest. For the first time in 10 years, I felt I could love again, she shared with me. Not because I had forgotten the pain, but because I had stopped hurting myself. Forgiveness doesn't mean what others did to you was right. Forgiveness means you no longer want to carry that pain in your heart. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give to others. It's a gift you give to yourself. Is there someone you need to forgive? Including yourself? Remember, you don't have to forget. You just need to let go of the right to hurt yourself over what's past. Your heart is too beautiful to be a prison for hatred. Take a deep breath and feel the relief when you open the door of your chest. Let old things fly away and let love return. This is the end of the first part of our journey. How do you feel? Has anything changed in your heart? Do you feel a little lighter? We've just explored some simple but profound secrets together. How to put down burdens that don't belong to us. How to welcome emotions like honored guests. How to truly live in the present moment. How to love our imperfect selves. How to feel connected to everything. How to find strength in vulnerability. And how to free ourselves through forgiveness. This is just the beginning. There are still many other doors waiting for us to open. Deeper stories, more subtle lessons, more powerful ways of healing. Rest a little. Let what you've just heard settle in your heart. And when you're ready, we'll continue the journey home, back to your own peaceful heart. The next part will take us deeper into understanding the true nature of happiness, the art of listening to the heart, and how to transform daily life into a meditation hall. But now, rest in the embrace of peace. You're doing so well. You know what I realized last week? We've been taught to search for happiness in the strangest places. It's like we're looking for our keys under a streetlight when we drop them in the house. We keep searching outside because the light is better there, but that's not where we lost them. I was sitting with a friend who just got promoted to her dream job. She should have been celebrating, right? Instead, she looked exhausted. I thought I'd be happy now, she said quietly. I have everything I wanted, but I still feel empty. Does this sound familiar? We chase the promotion, thinking it will make us happy. We chase the relationship, thinking it will complete us. We chase the perfect body, the perfect house, the perfect life, thinking happiness is waiting at the finish line. But here's what the Buddha discovered under that tree 2,500 years ago, and what my friend discovered that afternoon in the coffee shop. Happiness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's not something you achieve or acquire. It's something you uncover, like brushing dust off a mirror that was always perfectly clear underneath. Let me tell you about Sarah. She spent 3 years planning her wedding. Every detail had to be perfect: the dress, the flowers, the venue, the music. She was convinced that her wedding day would be the happiest day of her life. The day came, and it was indeed beautiful. Everything went according to plan. But as she lay in bed that night, still in her wedding dress, she felt nothing. Just tired. The happiness she expected to feel wasn't there. I kept waiting for this overwhelming joy to hit me, she told me months later. But the moments I actually felt happy weren't the big planned ones. They were tiny, like when my grandma squeezed my hand during the ceremony, or when I caught my new husband making funny faces at my nephew. That's when it hit her. The happiness wasn't in the event. It was in the presence, in the connection, in the simple moments when she wasn't trying to be happy. The ancient masters called this the happiness that doesn't depend on conditions. It's not happiness because something good happened. It's happiness that exists underneath all the happenings, like the silence that exists underneath all the sounds. Have you ever noticed that the happiest moments of your life probably weren't when you were trying to be happy? They were when you forgot to try. When you were laughing so hard you forgot your problems. When you were so absorbed in helping someone else you forgot your own worries. When you were watching a sunset and time just stopped. Right now, take a moment to remember your happiest memory. Not the one you think should be your happiest, but the one that actually was. What made it special? I bet it wasn't because you had everything you wanted. I bet it was because, in that moment, you didn't want anything else. That's the secret the Buddha found. Happiness isn't getting what you want. It's wanting what you have. It's being so present in this moment that the question of happiness doesn't even arise. You're just here. Fully, completely here. Now let me share something that might change how you see your heart forever. I used to think the heart was just a muscle that pumps blood. Then I met an old man at a bus stop who taught me otherwise. I was having a really tough day, stressed about work, and I must have looked it because he turned to me and said, "Son, When was the last time you listened to your heart? My heart? I was confused. Not the beating, he smiled. The knowing. Your heart knows things your mind hasn't figured out yet. But you have to get quiet enough to hear it. I thought he was being poetic, maybe a little eccentric. But that night, I tried something I'd never done before. I put my hand on my chest and asked my heart, "What do you need right now?" And you know what? It answered. Not in words, but in a feeling. A gentle pull toward calling my mom, whom I'd been too busy to talk to in weeks. A soft nudge to take a walk instead of collapsing in front of the TV. A quiet whisper that I was more tired than hungry, despite wanting to order pizza. That was my first conversation with my heart. And it wasn't the last. Your heart is like a compass that always points toward what will actually nourish you. But we live in such a noisy world, external noise and internal chatter, that we can barely hear its gentle voice. Let me tell you about Maria, a lawyer who was drowning in her career. She worked 80-hour weeks, made great money, but felt like she was suffocating. Everyone told her she was lucky. She had made it. But lying awake at 3 a.m., she felt anything but lucky. One night, exhausted and desperate, she did something she hadn't done since childhood. She prayed. Not to any specific God, just to whatever was listening. "Please," she whispered into the darkness. "Show me what I'm supposed to do with my life." No dramatic answer came. No voice from above. But over the next few days, she started noticing things. How her heart felt lighter when she helped a colleague with a problem. How time seemed to slow down when she was mentoring a young intern. How she felt most alive during the pro bono cases, helping families who couldn't afford legal fees. Her heart was showing her the way, but she had been too busy to notice. 6 months later, she left the big firm and opened a small practice focusing on family law and helping people who couldn't otherwise afford representation. Her income dropped by 60%. Her stress levels dropped by 90%. For the first time in years, I wake up excited about my day, she told me. Not because it's easy, but because it feels right. My heart and my work are finally pointing in the same direction. Your heart isn't just pumping blood. It's processing information, emotional, intuitive, spiritual information that your rational mind can't access. Scientists are now discovering that the heart has its own nervous system, its own brain, that communicates with your head brain. But you don't need science to know this. You felt it. You've met someone and instantly known you could trust them. That was your heart knowing. You've walked into a room and sensed tension without anyone saying a word. That was your heart, reading the invisible energies. You've had a gut feeling about a decision that turned out to be exactly right. That was your heart's wisdom. Right now, put your hand on your chest. Feel that steady rhythm. That's not just circulation, that's communication. Your heart is always talking to you. The question is, are you listening? Try this with me. Close your eyes and ask your heart one simple question. What do I need to know right now? Don't think about the answer. Just feel. What comes up might surprise you. Speaking of surprises, let me tell you about the most shocking discovery I made about peace. For years, I thought peace meant having no problems. I thought peaceful people were the lucky ones who somehow avoided life's difficulties. I was so wrong, it's almost funny. Real peace isn't the absence of storms. It's learning to dance in the rain. I learned this from my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She's 78 years old, and in the past 5 years, she's lost her husband, been diagnosed with diabetes, and had to move out of the home where she raised her children. If anyone had a right to be bitter, it was her. Instead, she's the most peaceful person I know. I asked her about it one day while we were both tending our gardens. Mrs. Chen, how do you stay so calm when so much has gone wrong? She paused her watering and looked at me with those wise eyes. Nothing went wrong, dear. Life just happened. And I learned something important. I am not my circumstances. I am how I respond to my circumstances. But don't you get angry? Don't you feel sad? Of course I do, she smiled. I feel everything. But I don't become everything I feel. When sadness visits, I say hello and offer it tea. When anger knocks, I acknowledge it, but don't invite it to move in permanently. Feelings are like weather, they come and go. But I am the sky that contains all weather. That metaphor changed my life. You are not the storm. You are not the rain. You are not even the sunshine. You are the vast open sky that can hold all weather without being destroyed by any of it. This is what the ancient masters called equanimity, the peace that doesn't depend on everything going your way. It's not numbness or detachment. It's the deep stability that comes from knowing who you really are underneath all the changing conditions. Think about the most peaceful person you know. I bet they're not someone who never faces problems. They're probably someone who faces problems with grace, who remains themselves no matter what's happening around them. that same peace is available to you. Not when your life gets perfect, but right now, in the middle of whatever storm you're facing. Because you are not the storm. You never were. Take a breath and feel that spaciousness inside you. That's your inner sky. It's big enough to hold whatever you're going through. Now, let me share something that completely revolutionized how I see every single day of my life. What if I told you that you're already living in a monastery, but you just haven't realized it yet? Think about it. Monks wake up early, follow a routine, work with their hands, practice patience, serve others, and try to stay present throughout their day. Sound familiar? That's basically what you do too, except instead of calling it spiritual practice, you call it Tuesday. The difference isn't what they do, it's how they see what they do. My friend James is a janitor at a downtown office building. For years, he saw his work as just a paycheck. Empty trash cans, mop floors, clean bathrooms, repeat. He felt invisible, unimportant, like his work didn't matter. Then he heard a talk about finding the sacred in the ordinary. That night, he went to work with a completely different mindset. Instead of just cleaning offices, he began seeing himself as creating spaces where people could do their best work. Instead of just emptying trash, he was helping maintain order in a chaotic world. I started paying attention to the small details, he told me. Making sure the bathroom mirrors sparkled so people could start their day feeling good about themselves. Arranging the chairs in meeting rooms so conversations could flow better. Leaving little notes of encouragement in cubicles where I noticed someone was struggling. Same job, same tasks, completely different experience. James transformed his workplace into his monastery, his daily routine into his spiritual practice. People started noticing, he said. Not just the cleaner offices, but something else. The energy was different. People began saying good morning to me, asking about my family. I wasn't invisible anymore. But here's the most beautiful part. I realized I had never been invisible. I was just looking at everything, including myself, without really seeing. Every single thing you do today can be a form of meditation. Washing dishes becomes a practice in mindfulness, feeling the warm water, noticing the soap bubbles, being present with the simple act of cleaning. Driving becomes a practice in patience and awareness. Listening to a friend becomes a practice in compassion. You don't need to go to a mountain monastery to find enlightenment. Your kitchen is a monastery. Your commute is a walking meditation. Your workplace is a temple where you practice service. Your relationships are your teachers. The question isn't whether your life is spiritual enough. question is, are you awake enough to see the spirituality that's already there? Right now, whatever you're doing, listening to this, breathing, existing in your body, this is your spiritual practice. This moment, exactly as it is your monastery. Let me tell you about the most important conversation I never heard. I was visiting my aunt in the hospital when I noticed the woman in the bed next to hers. She was probably in her 80s, and she seemed to be talking to someone, but there was no one there. I thought maybe she was confused, experiencing some kind of dementia. Then I realized she was talking to her deceased husband. "I know you can't answer me back, Frank," she was saying softly, "but I need to tell you about the grandkids. Little Emma lost her first tooth yesterday. She was so proud. And Michael finally got that promotion you always said he deserved. I should have looked away, given her privacy. But something about the conversation captivated me. She wasn't crying or lamenting. She was updating him, sharing life with him as if he were still there. Later, I got the courage to ask her about it. "Do you think he can hear you?" She smiled. "Does it matter? When I talk to him, he feels real to me again. And when he feels real, so does the love. Death can take away the person, but it can't take away the love. The love is eternal." That conversation changed how I see every relationship in my life. We spend so much time taking the people we love for granted. We're busy, distracted, always planning to have that real conversation when things calm down, or when we have more time, or after this project is finished. But what if we talk to the people in our lives like they might not be there tomorrow? What if we listened like it was the most important thing we could be doing? What if we said "I love you," not just when we felt like it, but because we recognize how precious and temporary every moment is? I started an experiment after meeting that woman. When my mom calls, instead of half listening while scrolling through my phone, I give her my full attention. When my friend is telling me about their problems, instead of thinking about what advice to give, I just listen, really listen to what they're sharing. The results were immediate. My relationships became deeper, richer, more meaningful. People started sharing more with me because they could feel that I was really there with them. "You've become such a good listener," my sister told me recently. "It's like when you're with someone, you're really with them." That's all it took. Not communication classes or therapy techniques. Just the recognition that every conversation is precious, every moment of connection is a gift, every person in front of me deserves the full presence of my attention. When you truly listen to someone, you're giving them something more valuable than advice or solutions. You're giving them the experience of being fully seen and heard. In a world where everyone is distracted, your presence becomes a sanctuary. Who in your life needs to feel truly heard today? Maybe it's your partner, your child, your parent, your friend. Maybe it's even yourself. When was the last time you really listened to what your own heart was trying to tell you? True listening is one of the most profound spiritual practices available to us. Because when we listen deeply, we step out of our own story long enough to enter someone else's. And in that moment of genuine connection, something sacred happens. We remember that we're not separate after all. Now let me share something that might sound impossible, but I promise it's true. You can find God in a traffic jam. I used to think rush hour was a special form of torture designed to test my patience. Cars moving slower than walking pace, everyone honking, like it would somehow make the traffic disappear, the stress of being late building in my chest. Then I met this Uber driver who completely changed my perspective. His name was David, and he was the calmest person I'd ever met in traffic. While other drivers were gesturing angrily and switching lanes constantly, David was humming softly, occasionally smiling at something only he could see. "How are you so relaxed?" I asked him. "Doesn't traffic stress you out?" He laughed gently. "Traffic is my monastery. This car is my meditation hall. Every red light is a bell reminding me to breathe. Every impatient driver is my teacher, showing me what stress looks like so I can choose something different." "But don't you want to get places faster?" "Where am I rushing to?" he asked. "I'm already here. Right here, right now. This is my life happening. Why would I want to miss it by wishing I was somewhere else?" That ride changed everything for me. I started seeing traffic differently. Instead of a delay, it became an opportunity. An opportunity to practice patience, to listen to music mindfully, to have conversations with passengers, to notice the sky, the buildings, the other human beings sharing the road with me. I began to realize that there's no such thing as dead time. Every moment is alive if we bring ourselves fully to it. Waiting in line at the grocery store became an opportunity to practice patience and notice the humanity around me. The tired mother trying to keep her toddler entertained. The elderly man counting exact change with careful precision. The cashier working hard to serve everyone with kindness. Washing dishes became a meditation on gratitude, pros for food, for clean water, for hands that can work. Folding laundry became a practice in mindfulness, Zen, feeling the textures, appreciating the colors, moving with deliberate attention. The spiritual teachers of old weren't wrong when they went to mountaintops and monasteries. But they might have been onto something even bigger, the realization that every moment, Every activity, every seemingly mundane aspect of life is already holy if we have eyes to see it. You don't need to find God. God is in the traffic jam, in the grocery line, in the dirty dishes, in the unmade bed, in the difficult conversation, in the moment of boredom, in the second of pure joy, when your child laughs at something silly. The question isn't whether the sacred is present. The question is whether you're present enough to notice it. Take a look around you right now. What do you see when you really look? What becomes possible when you treat this ordinary moment like the miracle it actually is? Here's something that will blow your mind. You are performing miracles every single day without realizing it. Think about it. You're taking air, invisible, tasteless, odorless air, and somehow extracting life from it. Your heart beats about 100 times a day without you telling it to. Your body fights off countless infections without you even knowing. Your brain processes millions of pieces of information every second, most of it completely unconsciously. You are a walking miracle having a human experience. But here's an even bigger miracle. You can choose how to respond to whatever happens to you. You can't control the weather, but you can choose your attitude toward the rain. You can't control other people's actions, but you can choose how those actions affect your inner peace. This is what the Buddha called the greatest freedom, the freedom to choose your response. I learned this from watching my friend Tom go through a divorce. For months, he was angry, bitter, constantly talking about what his ex-wife had done wrong, how unfair the settlement was, how his life had been ruined. Then, something shifted. I realized I was giving her all my power, he told me. Every day I stayed angry was another day she controlled my emotional state, even though she wasn't even in my life anymore. So what did you do? I chose differently, he said simply. I chose to see the divorce as an opportunity to rediscover who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else's idea of a perfect husband. I chose to see my pain as a teacher showing me what really matters. I chose to focus on building a new life instead of mourning the old one. Same situation, completely different experience. Tom performed the miracle of conscious choice. You perform this miracle too, every day. Every time you choose patience over anger, kindness over judgment, hope over despair, forgiveness over resentment, you're exercising the most powerful force in the universe, conscious awareness. This doesn't mean pretending difficult things aren't difficult. It means recognizing that you have more power than you realize, not the power to control external circumstances, but the far greater power to choose how those circumstances affect your inner world. Right now, is there any situation in your life where you've been feeling powerless? What would change if you asked yourself, I can't control what happened, but how do I want to respond? Who do I want to be in the face of this challenge? That question is the beginning of every miracle. Because the moment you realize you have a choice, you're no longer a victim of circumstances. You're a creator of your experience. Let me tell you about the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. I was in a hospital waiting room when I saw an elderly couple saying goodbye. He was being wheeled into surgery, a risky procedure that they both knew he might not survive. Instead of tears and panic, there was this incredible stillness between them. She took his hand and said simply, "Thank you for 52 beautiful years. If this is goodbye, know that loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." He squeezed her hand and replied, "And if I wake up, I get to love you for however many more days we're given. Either way, I'm the luckiest man in the world." There wasn't a dry eye in that waiting room. But what struck me wasn't the sadness of the moment. It was the absolute presence, the complete acceptance, the total love without conditions. They weren't wasting their potentially last moments together on regrets or fears. They were fully present to the love that existed between them, right there, right then. That's when I understood what living fully really means. It's not about having a long life or a perfect life. It's about being completely present to whatever life you have. Most of us live as if we have forever. We postpone the important conversations, delay expressing our love, wait for someday to be truly present with the people who matter most. We act like love and presence and connection are items on our to-do list that we'll get to eventually. But what if eventually never comes? What if today is all we have? This isn't meant to be morbid. It's meant to be liberating. When you truly grasp the preciousness and fragility of this moment, everything becomes more vivid, more meaningful, more sacred. The coffee tastes richer because you realize you might not taste coffee forever. The hug lasts longer because you understand that hugs are not guaranteed. The conversation goes deeper because you recognize that words, once spoken with presence, can heal wounds that have festered for years. I started living each day as if it were both my first and last. First day, everything is new, curious, full of possibility. Last day, everything is precious, meaningful, worth my complete attention. How would I spend today if I knew it was my last day with this person? Became my question. Not in a morbid way, but in a way that reminded me to love fully, speak truthfully, and be present completely. The couple in the hospital taught me that the greatest tragedy isn't death, it's living without truly living. It's going through the motions instead of experiencing the emotions. It's being physically present but spiritually absent. Right now, you're alive. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment of consciousness, it's all a gift. A gift you didn't earn and can't keep forever, but can fully experience right now. Who in your life would you want to thank if this were your last conversation with them? What would you want them to know? What would you want to experience fully before this day ends? Don't wait for the hospital waiting room to remember what matters most. You know what I've discovered after all these stories, all these lessons, all these moments of recognition? The wisdom we're seeking isn't somewhere out there waiting to be found. It's already inside you, waiting to be remembered. Every story I've shared, every insight that resonated, every moment of, yes, I know this feeling, that recognition came from within you. I didn't give you that wisdom. I just held up a mirror so you could see what was already there. You already know how to love. You already know what peace feels like. You already know the difference between living from fear and living from truth. You already know what your heart is calling you toward. The question isn't whether you have access to wisdom. The question is whether you trust the wisdom you already have. Take a moment right now to acknowledge how much you actually know. You know when someone is being genuine or putting on an act. You know when you're living in alignment with your values or compromising them. You know what nourishes your soul and what depletes it. This knowing isn't something you learned from books or teachers. It's something you've always carried, like a compass, pointing toward home. The beautiful thing about this inner wisdom is that it's not just yours, it's the same wisdom that flows through every conscious being. When you recognize truth, you're tapping into the same source of knowing that the Buddha found under his tree, that every sage and mystic and ordinary person having an extraordinary moment of clarity has found. We're all drinking from the same well of wisdom. We're all carriers of the same light. We're all walking each other home. So as we prepare to go deeper into how to live this wisdom, how to practice what we've remembered, how to integrate these insights into every day of our lives, know this: you already have everything you need. You are already everything you need to be. The next part of our journey isn't about learning more. It's about trusting more, trusting the wisdom that's been whispering to you all along, trusting the love that's been holding you through everything, trusting the peace that's been waiting patiently for you to stop looking everywhere else and come home to yourself. Rest here for a moment. You've been such a beautiful listener, such an open heart, such a willing soul. The deepest teachings are yet to come, but first, let yourself absorb what you've already received. You're doing something sacred right now. You're remembering who you really are. Here's something that might surprise you. The most profound spiritual practice I ever learned happened in my kitchen at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was making coffee, running through my mental to-do list for the day, when I suddenly stopped. Really stopped. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something whispered, "What if you actually made this coffee instead of just going through the motions?" So, I tried something radical. I paid attention. I felt the weight of the coffee beans in my palm. I listened to the grinder's rhythm. I watched the steam rise from the hot water. I smelled the rich aroma filling the air. For maybe the first time in years, I was completely present for making coffee. And you know what happened? That simple cup of coffee became the most perfect cup of coffee I'd ever tasted. Not because the beans were different or the technique was special, because I was actually there to taste it. That's when I understood what meditation really is. It's not sitting cross-legged on a cushion, trying to empty your mind. It's bringing your full attention to whatever you're already doing. Your entire life can become a meditation. Let me tell you about Janet, a nurse who discovered this truth in the most unlikely place. Janet worked in the ER, one of the most chaotic environments you can imagine. Constant noise, life and death decisions, people in crisis, never enough time. She was burning out fast, going home every night emotionally drained and physically exhausted. Then she attended a workshop about mindful nursing. The instructor said something that changed everything. You can't control the chaos around you, but you can control the quality of attention you bring to each moment. Janet decided to try an experiment. Instead of rushing from patient to patient on autopilot, she would take one conscious breath before entering each room. Just one breath, but a breath where she reminded herself, "I am here. I am present. I am about to meet another human being who needs care." The results were immediate. It was like I had been sleepwalking through my work and suddenly woke up, she told me. The same job, the same chaos, but I was actually there for it instead of just surviving it. Patients began commenting on how calm she seemed, how safe they felt with her. Her colleagues noticed she wasn't snapping at people anymore. Her supervisor asked what had changed. "Nothing changed except my attention," Janet said. I realized that presence is a superpower. When you're fully there with someone, especially someone who's scared or in pain, you give them something medicine can't provide, the feeling that they're not alone. One breath. That's all it took. One conscious breath before each interaction transformed her work from a job into a calling. This is what I love about real spiritual practice. It doesn't require you to change your life, just to wake up to the life you're already living. You don't need a meditation cushion, though it can be helpful. You don't need to chant in Sanskrit, though some people find it meaningful. You don't need to go to India, though the journey might be beautiful. You just need to bring conscious attention to this moment, whatever this moment contains. Right now, you're breathing. Feel that breath. That's meditation. You're listening to these words. That's mindfulness. You're alive in this moment. That's the deepest spiritual practice available to any human being. But let me warn you about something. Your mind is going to resist this simplicity. I remember when I first started trying to meditate. I would sit down, close my eyes, and immediately my mind would start a revolution. This is boring. This isn't working. You're not doing it right. You should be thinking about that work project. Did you remember to pay the electric bill? What was that noise? I thought I was the worst meditator in the world. Then I talked to my teacher about it. "Congratulations," she said with a big smile. "You're meditating perfectly." "What do you mean?" "My mind won't stop chattering." That's exactly what meditation is, noticing that your mind is chattering. She laughed gently. "You're not trying to stop your thoughts. You're just becoming aware that you have thoughts." Most people go through their entire lives without ever noticing the voice in their head. You've discovered it. That's awakening. This changed everything for me. I stopped trying to have a perfect meditation and started just noticing what was actually happening. Sometimes my mind was quiet. Sometimes it was racing. Sometimes I felt peaceful. Sometimes I felt agitated. All of it was perfect. The practice wasn't about controlling my experience. It was about being aware of my experience, whatever it was. Let me share something that might save you years of struggle. Meditation is not about stopping thoughts. It's about changing your relationship with thoughts. Think of your thoughts like clouds in the sky. Sometimes there are big, dark storm clouds. Sometimes there are light, fluffy clouds. Sometimes the sky is perfectly clear. But you are not the clouds. You are the sky itself. The vast, open space that can hold any weather without being disturbed by it. Your thoughts will come and go. Your emotions will rise and fall. Your circumstances will change constantly. But the awareness that observes all of this, that's who you really are. That awareness is always peaceful, always present, always okay. This is what Buddha discovered under that tree. Not how to stop being human, but how to be fully human without being overwhelmed by the human experience. Now let me tell you about the most important conversation you'll ever have, the one with yourself. I used to think talking to myself was a sign of losing it. Then I realized I was already talking to myself all day long. I just wasn't doing it consciously or kindly. Most of our internal dialogue is pretty harsh. You're so stupid. Why did you say that? You'll never be good enough. Everyone else has it figured out. You're falling behind. You should be further along by now. Would you talk to your best friend this way? Would you talk to a child this way? Then why is it okay to talk to yourself this way? I learned to change this from my friend Marcus, who went through a terrible depression. He told me about the day he realized he had been emotionally abusing himself for years. I was lying in bed, unable to get up, and this voice in my head was saying, "You're pathetic. Everyone else can handle life. What's wrong with you?" Then, something shifted. I suddenly heard that voice clearly, like it was a separate person. And I thought, who is this? And why am I letting them talk to me like this? That was Marcus's awakening moment. He began talking back to the critical voice, not with more criticism, but with compassion. When that voice said, "You're worthless," I would respond, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but that's not true. I'm going through a hard time, and I deserve kindness, especially from myself." Marcus started treating himself like he would treat a good friend going through depression. With patience, understanding, and gentle encouragement. I became my own best friend instead of my worst enemy. The depression didn't magically disappear, but his relationship with it completely changed. Instead of fighting it, he learned to care for himself through it. Instead of judging himself for struggling, he offered himself the compassion he would show anyone else in pain. This is one of the most powerful practices you can develop: conscious, kind, internal dialogue. Throughout your day, notice how you talk to yourself. When you make a mistake, do you say, "I'm so stupid," or "Everyone makes mistakes, I'll do better next time"? When you're facing a challenge, do you think, "I can't handle this," or "This is difficult, and I'm learning how to handle difficult things"? The voice in your head is going to talk all day anyway. You might as well make it a voice of wisdom and kindness instead of criticism and fear. Right now, try saying this to yourself: "I'm doing the best I can with what I know right now, and that's enough." Feel how different that is from your usual internal commentary. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you treat yourself with kindness, you naturally extend that kindness to others. When you forgive yourself for being imperfect, you can forgive others for their imperfections too. Speaking of imperfection, let me tell you about the most freeing realization I ever had. I used to think that spiritual people were supposed to be calm all the time, never get angry, always respond with wisdom and compassion. I thought there was some advanced level of consciousness where you transcended all difficult emotions and lived in perpetual serenity. This belief was making me crazy. Every time I felt frustrated, jealous, sad, or afraid, I thought it meant I was failing at my spiritual practice. I was spiritually judging myself for being human. Then I met Brother Thomas, a monk who had been practicing for 40 years. I asked him about this during a retreat. "Brother Thomas, do you ever get angry anymore?" He laughed heartily. "Oh my. Just last week I got so frustrated with our old printer that I wanted to throw it out the window. And you know what I did?" "What?" I acknowledged my anger, took a few deep breaths, and then I fixed the printer. Being spiritual doesn't mean being emotionless. It means being honest about your emotions and responding to them wisely. But don't you feel like you should be beyond anger by now? Beyond anger? No, my friend. Through anger, yes. I feel it, I acknowledge it, I let it inform me about what needs attention, and then I choose how to respond. He smiled warmly. The goal isn't to become a robot. It's to become fully human. This conversation liberated me from the myth of spiritual perfection. The point isn't to transcend your humanity. It's to embrace your humanity with consciousness and compassion. You're going to feel the full range of human emotions, and that's not a bug in the system. It's a feature. Emotions are information. They tell you what matters to you, what you need, what requires attention. Anger might be telling you that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness might be pointing to something you need to grieve. Fear might be highlighting something that needs care or attention. Joy might be showing you what brings your soul alive. The practice isn't to avoid these emotions, but to feel them consciously and respond to them wisely. When anger arises, instead of either suppressing it or exploding with it, you can pause and ask, what is this anger trying to tell me? How can I honor its message while responding from my wisest self? This is emotional intelligence in action, not being controlled by your emotions, but not being cut off from them either. Let me tell you about a practice that changed how I handle every difficult situation. It's called the sacred pause, and I learned it from my friend Sarah during the most stressful period of her life. She was going through a divorce. Her mom was in the hospital. She was facing a potential job loss, and her teenage son was acting out. I felt like I was drowning in crisis after crisis, she told me. I was reacting to everything from a place of panic and overwhelm. I wasn't making good decisions because I wasn't thinking clearly. Then her therapist taught her something simple but revolutionary. Between stimulus and response, there is always a space. In that space lies your freedom to choose your response. Sarah started practicing the sacred pause. Whenever something stressful happened, an angry email, a difficult phone call, her son slamming his bedroom door, instead of immediately reacting, she would pause. Not a long pause. Just 3 conscious breaths. 3 breaths to let her nervous system settle, to remember who she wanted to be in that moment, to choose her response instead of just reacting automatically. It was amazing how much power those 3 breaths gave me, she said. I went from being a victim of circumstances to being someone who could respond thoughtfully to circumstances. The divorce still happened, but she navigated it with dignity instead of destructiveness. Her mom still got sick, but Sarah could be present for her without falling apart. Her job situation resolved better than expected because she handled the stress professionally. Her relationship with her son improved because she stopped reacting to his emotions and started responding to his needs. 3 breaths gave me my life back, she said. I realized I had way more choice than I thought. The sacred pause works because it interrupts the automatic pattern of stress reaction. It creates space between what happens to you and how you respond. In that space, wisdom can emerge. You can practice this anywhere, anytime. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Pause, breathe, choose your response. You get criticism at work. Pause, breathe, choose your response. Your child is having a meltdown. Pause, breathe, choose your response. This doesn't mean you become passive or don't have emotions. It means you become responsive instead of reactive. You start living from your wisdom instead of just your impulses. Try it right now. Think of something that's been stressing you lately. Instead of immediately going into the story about it, just pause. Take 3 conscious breaths. Notice how even that small space changes your relationship to the situation. That space is where your freedom lives. Now, let me share something that will revolutionize how you see every person you encounter. I used to divide people into categories: people I liked and people I didn't like, people who were easy to be around and people who pushed my buttons, people who seemed to get it and people who seemed hopelessly unconscious. Then I learned something that changed everything. Every person you meet is your teacher. I know that sounds like some feel-good spiritual platitude, but I mean it literally. Every interaction is designed to teach you something about yourself, about life, about love. The people who trigger you the most are often your greatest teachers. They show you where you still have work to do, where you're still holding on to judgment or fear, or the need to control. I learned this the hard way from my neighbor Bob. Bob was everything that irritated me. He played music too loud, left his trash cans out too long, parked inconsiderately. For months, I complained about him to my wife, built up elaborate stories about what kind of person he was. Then one day, I ran into Bob at the grocery store. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, clearly struggling. Instead of avoiding him like I usually did, something made me ask, "Hey Bob, are you okay?" His eyes filled with tears. My wife just got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. She's only 58. I'm trying to take care of her and work full time, and I'm not handling it well. In that moment, my entire story about Bob crumbled. This wasn't some inconsiderate jerk. This was a human being going through unimaginable pain, doing the best he could with impossible circumstances. "I'm so sorry," I said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Bob became one of my dearest friends. I helped him with yard work when he was too exhausted to do it himself. He taught me about loyalty and devotion by watching how tenderly he cared for his wife as her condition worsened. When she passed away 2 years later, Bob told me, "Thank you for seeing me that day in the grocery store." Not the story about me, but me. That's when I understood. Every person is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Every person has a story that would break your heart if you knew it. Every person is doing the best they can with the resources they have. This doesn't mean you have to like everyone or agree with everyone. It means you can approach everyone with basic human compassion, recognizing that we're all struggling, we're all learning, we're all just trying to find our way home to love and acceptance. The person who cuts you off in traffic might be rushing to the hospital. The cashier who seems rude might be dealing with personal crisis. The co-worker who's difficult might be struggling with depression. When you start seeing everyone as a fellow human being doing their best, rather than as obstacles to your happiness, everything changes. Your irritation transforms into compassion. Your judgment softens into curiosity. Your separation melts into connection. This is one of the most practical spiritual practices available, seeing the sacred in every person you encounter. Not because they're perfect, but because they're human. Just like you. Let me tell you about a practice that will transform your relationship with difficult emotions. I call it emotional weather reporting, and I learned it from my friend Lisa, a therapist who uses it with her clients. Instead of saying I am angry or I am sad, try saying I'm experiencing anger right now, or there's sadness moving through me. This subtle shift in language changes everything. You're not identifying with the emotion. You're observing it. You're not the storm. You're the space in which the storm is happening. Lisa taught me this during one of the most challenging periods of my life. I was going through a breakup, and I kept saying things like, "I'm devastated," and "I'm heartbroken." Notice how that language makes you the emotion, she pointed out. What if instead you said, I'm experiencing devastation, or heartbreak is moving through me? I tried it and immediately felt a shift. There was still pain, but there was also space around the pain. I wasn't drowning in the emotion. I was aware of myself experiencing the emotion. Now try this, Lisa continued. Imagine you're a weather reporter for your inner landscape. This morning we're seeing heavy clouds of sadness moving through, with occasional storms of anger. Visibility is limited, but conditions are expected to change throughout the day. It sounds silly, but it works. When you approach your emotions like weather, temporary conditions that come and go, you stop taking them so personally. You can acknowledge them without being overwhelmed by them. Today I'm experiencing anxiety about that presentation. Feels very different from, I'm anxious. The first acknowledges a temporary experience. The second makes anxiety your identity. This practice is especially helpful with depression. Instead of, I am depressed, try, I'm moving through a period of depression. Instead of making it your permanent state, you acknowledge it as a temporary weather pattern. Emotions are like clouds. They arise, they exist for a while, and they pass away. You are the sky that contains all weather. The sky is never damaged by storms, never permanently changed by clouds. Right now, what's the weather in your inner landscape? Are there clouds of worry? Sunshine of contentment? Storms of frustration? Just notice, without judgment. You're not trying to change the weather. You're just becoming conscious of it. This awareness alone begins to transform your relationship with difficult emotions. They become experiences you're having, rather than who you are. Now let me share the most radical practice I know, loving what is. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting injustice. It means starting from a place of acceptance with what's actually happening, rather than fighting reality and making yourself miserable. I learned this from my friend David, whose son was diagnosed with autism. For the first year after the diagnosis, David was in constant battle with reality. This shouldn't be happening. Other kids don't have these challenges. It's not fair. Why us? He was exhausted from fighting what was already true. Then David met another parent who told him something that changed his life. You can spend your energy fighting the diagnosis, or you can spend your energy loving your son. But you can't do both effectively. David chose love. Instead of focusing on everything his son couldn't do, he began celebrating everything he could do. Instead of mourning the child he thought he was supposed to have, he fell in love with the child he actually had. My son taught me more about presence, authenticity, and unconditional love than any spiritual teacher ever could, David told me years later. His autism isn't a tragedy, it's his way of being in the world. And it's beautiful. This is what loving what is looks like. Not pretending that difficult things aren't difficult, but working with reality instead of against it. You lost the job. That's what is. You can spend your energy being bitter about it, or you can spend your energy finding the next opportunity. The relationship ended. That's what is. You can spend your time trying to change the past, or you can use this time to rediscover who you are when you're not trying to be someone else's idea of perfect. Your body has limitations. Your family has problems. Your finances aren't where you want them to be. That's what is. You can exhaust yourself fighting these realities, or you can work skillfully with the conditions you actually have. This doesn't mean you don't work to improve things. It means you start from a place of acceptance rather than resistance. You change what you can change, accept what you can't change, and develop the wisdom to know the difference. When you stop fighting reality, you free up enormous amounts of energy that you can use to actually engage with life constructively. Right now, is there something in your life you've been fighting or resisting? What would it feel like to take a deep breath and say, "This is what's happening right now. I don't have to like it, but I can accept it." And from this place of acceptance, what's my wisest response? That question, what's my wisest response, is the beginning of transformation. Let me tell you about the practice that connects you to something larger than your individual struggles. It's called loving kindness meditation, and I learned it during the darkest period of my life. I was dealing with depression, relationship problems, career uncertainty, and I felt completely alone in the world. A friend suggested I try this ancient Buddhist practice. You start by directing loving wishes toward yourself, then gradually extend them to others. I was skeptical. How could sitting quietly and thinking nice thoughts about people possibly help with real problems? But I was desperate enough to try anything. I started with the traditional phrases, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be at peace," "May I be free from suffering." At first, it felt hollow, mechanical. I didn't feel loving toward myself. I was mostly angry and disappointed with how my life was going. But I kept practicing. After a few weeks, something began to shift. The phrases started feeling less like empty words and more like genuine wishes for my own well-being. Then I moved to the second stage, extending loving kindness to loved ones. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. May you be free from suffering. I would picture my family, close friends, people who had shown me kindness. This part felt easier. I could genuinely wish for their happiness and peace. The third stage was more challenging. Neutral people. The cashier at the grocery store, my mailman, people I didn't know well. This practice began expanding my sense of care beyond my immediate circle. The fourth stage nearly broke me open. Difficult people. My ex-boyfriend who had hurt me. The boss who had been unfair. The friend who had betrayed my trust. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. May you be free from suffering. I could barely get the words out at first. How could I wish happiness for someone who had caused me pain? But gradually, I began to understand something profound. Hurt people hurt people. The person who betrayed me was probably acting from their own pain and fear. The difficult boss was likely struggling with their own insecurities and pressures. This didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me see them as human beings rather than villains in my story. The final stage completed the transformation, extending loving kindness to all beings everywhere. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be free from suffering. When I could genuinely feel that wish for all of life, something in me healed. My problems didn't disappear, but I no longer felt isolated in them. I was part of the human community, connected to every other being who has ever experienced suffering and hoped for happiness. This practice didn't just change my meditation sessions, it changed how I moved through the world. I started seeing strangers as people I had already wished well for. Difficult interactions became opportunities to practice compassion. My own suffering became a doorway to understanding everyone else's suffering. You can try this right now. Start with yourself. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be at peace. May I be free from suffering. Really mean it. You deserve these things just for being alive. Then expand it to someone you love. Feel that genuine wish for their well-being. Then try it with someone neutral. The person who delivered your mail today, someone you passed on the street. If you're feeling brave, try it with someone who's been difficult. Remember, you're not condoning their actions, you're recognizing their humanity. Finally, expand it to everyone, everywhere. Feel your heart opening to include all of life in your care. This is how you remember that you're not separate from the rest of life. You're part of an interconnected web of beings, all seeking happiness, all deserving compassion. Here's what I want you to know as we near the end of this practice section. There is no perfect way to do any of this. You don't need to meditate for hours a day. You don't need to become a vegetarian or give up your possessions or move to a monastery. You don't need to be calm all the time or never feel difficult emotions. You just need to wake up to the life you're already living. Bring consciousness to your breath, your steps, your words, your actions. Treat yourself and others with a little more kindness. Notice the beauty that's already surrounding you. Practice pausing before reacting. Remember that everyone is fighting battles you can't see. These simple practices, done consistently with sincerity, will transform your life. Not because they'll make your problems disappear, but because they'll change your relationship to whatever challenges arise. You'll discover that peace isn't the absence of difficulties, it's the presence of wisdom and compassion in the face of difficulties. You'll realize that happiness isn't getting everything you want. It's appreciating what you have while working skillfully toward what you need. You'll understand that love isn't a feeling you fall into. It's a practice you choose, moment by moment, with yourself and others. The path we've been walking together isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself, the wise, compassionate, peaceful self that has been there all along, waiting beneath the surface of your fears and defenses and conditioned patterns. That self is not separate from your daily life. It doesn't live only in quiet meditation halls or spiritual retreats. It's available in traffic jams and grocery stores, in difficult conversations and mundane tasks, in moments of joy and periods of sorrow. Every breath is an opportunity to practice. Every interaction is a chance to choose love over fear. Every challenge is an invitation to discover how strong and resilient and wise you actually are. The practices we've explored, mindful attention, loving self-talk, the sacred pause, seeing teachers everywhere, emotional weather reporting, loving what is, extending kindness to all beings. These aren't just techniques. They're ways of remembering who you really are. And who you really are is magnificent. As we prepare to explore how to integrate all of this into your everyday life, how to maintain your practice when life gets overwhelming, how to keep your heart open when the world seems to be closing down, rest in this knowing. You already have everything you need to live with greater peace, wisdom, and love. The practices simply help you access what was never actually missing. You're not broken and in need of fixing. You're not lacking and in need of acquiring. You're not lost and in need of finding. You're a human being having a human experience, and that experience, exactly as it is, with all its beauty and messiness and complexity, is sacred. The final part of our journey together will be about bringing all of this home making it practical and sustainable, and discovering how your awakened presence becomes a gift, not just to yourself, but to everyone whose life you touch. But for now, just breathe. Feel your aliveness. Notice the awareness that's been present throughout all these stories, all these practices, all these moments of recognition. That awareness is who you truly are. And it's absolutely perfect, exactly as it is. You know what nobody tells you about spiritual awakening? It's not a destination you arrive at on some peaceful mountaintop. It's a practice you bring to Monday morning. I learned this the hard way when I came home from my first meditation retreat. For 7 days, I had experienced the most profound peace I'd ever known. Sitting in silence, walking mindfully through gardens, eating simple meals with complete attention. I felt like I had finally figured out this whole being human thing. Then I walked back into my regular life. Within 2 hours, I was stuck in traffic, running late for work, my phone buzzing with urgent emails, my mind racing with the same old patterns of stress and reactivity. Where was all that peace I had just discovered? Had I imagined it? Was it only available in retreat centers with no distractions? That's when my teacher told me something that changed everything. The retreat was just practice. Real life is the exam. The point wasn't to feel peaceful in perfect conditions. The point was to learn how to access that peace in the middle of chaos, how to stay centered when everything around you is spinning, how to respond from wisdom when your old patterns are screaming at you to react from fear. This is what integration really means, not escaping your life to find peace, but bringing peace into your life exactly as it is. Let me tell you about my friend Rachel, who figured this out in the most ordinary place imaginable, her kitchen at breakfast time. Rachel had 3 kids under 8, a demanding job, and a husband who traveled frequently for work. Her mornings were pure chaos, kids fighting over cereal, lunches to pack, homework forgotten until the last minute, everyone running late. I felt like I was failing at everything, she told me. I'd read all these books about mindfulness and presence, but the minute my 6-year-old had a meltdown about wearing socks, all my spiritual wisdom went out the window. Then Rachel decided to try an experiment. Instead of trying to make her mornings peaceful, she would practice staying peaceful within the chaos. She created what she called micro moments of mindfulness. While pouring coffee, she would take 3 conscious breaths. While packing lunches, she would feel the textures of the food in her hands. When the kids started arguing, instead of immediately jumping into problem-solving mode, she would pause and ask herself, what would love do right now? It wasn't about changing what was happening, she explained. It was about changing how I was being with what was happening. The transformation was remarkable, but not in the way you might expect. The kids still fought sometimes. Mornings still had their challenges. But Rachel's presence in the middle of it all completely shifted the energy. When I stayed calm, everyone else stayed calmer, she realized. When I responded from love instead of reactivity, even the chaos felt manageable. My kids started saying things like, "Mommy, you seem happier, and thanks for not yelling at us about the socks." Rachel had discovered the secret of integration. You don't need perfect circumstances to practice presence. You need presence to handle imperfect circumstances. Your spiritual practice isn't separate from your regular life. It is your regular life, approached with consciousness instead of automation. But here's what I want to prepare you for. You're going to forget. A lot. You're going to have days when you react exactly like you used to. When someone pushes your buttons and you push back. When stress overwhelms you and you slip into old patterns of worry and control. When you say things you don't mean and do things that don't align with your values. And in those moments, you're going to think you've failed. That all this wisdom was just pretty ideas that don't work in real life. That you're not spiritual enough, not evolved enough, not disciplined enough. Let me save you from that particular form of suffering right now. Forgetting is part of the path. I remember the day I completely lost it with a customer service representative. I had been practicing patience and compassion for months, feeling pretty good about my spiritual progress. Then my internet went down during an important work deadline. I spent 2 hours on hold, got transferred 6 times, and when the 7th person asked me to restart my modem again, I exploded. I mean, really exploded. Raised my voice, used words I'm not proud of, hung up in anger. For the rest of the day, I felt terrible about myself. Some spiritual person I am, I thought. All that meditation, and I'm still just an angry, impatient person pretending to be evolved. That night, I called my teacher and confessed my failure. She laughed gently. "Did you eventually notice you were angry?" "Well, yes, but not until I had already blown up." "And how did you feel about having blown up?" "Awful. Guilty. Disappointed in myself." "And what did you learn from the experience?" I thought about it. That I still have triggers. That I need better strategies for handling frustration. That I want to respond differently next time. "Perfect," she said. "That's exactly what awakening looks like. Not never making mistakes, but becoming aware of your mistakes more quickly, feeling genuine remorse when you act from unconsciousness, and learning from the experience." She continued, "The person you were a year ago might have blown up and then justified it, blamed the customer service rep, told everyone how terrible the company was. but you blew up and then examined your own behavior. That's enormous spiritual growth. This conversation liberated me from the myth of spiritual perfection. The goal isn't to become someone who never gets triggered, never makes mistakes, never has difficult emotions. The goal is to become someone who recovers more quickly, learns more readily, and responds more wisely next time. Your spiritual practice is like building a muscle. Some days you'll feel strong and centered. Some days you'll feel weak and scattered. Both are part of the process. The practice is showing up consistently, not performing perfectly. This is especially important to remember when life hits you with real challenges. I learned this from my friend Mark, whose wife was diagnosed with cancer just 6 months after he had started a daily meditation practice. The diagnosis threw him into a tailspin of fear, anger, and helplessness. I kept thinking my meditation should be helping me handle this better, he told me. I should be more accepting, more peaceful, more trusting that everything happens for a reason. Instead, I was a mess. Mark was expecting his spiritual practice to make him superhuman. Instead, it was making him more fully human, more aware of his feelings, more honest about his fears, more open to receiving support from others. The meditation didn't take away the fear, he realized. But it helped me be with the fear without being consumed by it. I could feel terrified and still show up lovingly for my wife. I could acknowledge my helplessness and still take action where I could make a difference. Mark's wife went through treatment successfully, and their relationship emerged stronger than ever. Not because his spiritual practice prevented suffering, but because it taught him how to suffer consciously, to feel pain without adding unnecessary suffering on top of it. I used to think spirituality was about escaping difficult emotions, he reflected. Now I know it's about having the full human experience with greater awareness and compassion. This is integration at its deepest level, bringing consciousness to whatever life presents, whether it's beautiful or heartbreaking or utterly ordinary. Now, let me tell you about the ripple effect that happens when you start living this way. When you begin practicing presence, kindness, and wisdom in your daily life, something beautiful starts to happen. Other people notice. Not because you're preaching or teaching or trying to change anyone, but because your energy has shifted. I saw this with my neighbor Janet. She started a simple meditation practice, NSS, just 10 minutes each morning, and within a few months, people began commenting on how different she seemed. "What are you doing differently?" her sister asked. "You seem so much calmer, so much more yourself." Janet hadn't told anyone about her meditation practice. She wasn't posting inspirational quotes on social media or talking about spiritual concepts. She was just showing up differently in her relationships, more present in conversations, less reactive to drama, quicker to offer kindness and slower to judge. Her teenage daughter, who had been going through a rebellious phase, started opening up to her more. "It's like Mom actually listens now instead of just waiting for her turn to give advice," she told her dad. Janet's co-workers noticed she didn't get stressed about things that used to send her into a panic. Her friends felt more comfortable sharing their struggles because she had become such a compassionate listener. "I'm not doing anything different," Janet told me. "I'm just doing everything more consciously." This is how transformation really works. Not through dramatic gestures or major life changes, but through small, consistent shifts in how you show up moment by moment. Your presence becomes a gift to everyone around you. People don't need you to fix them or save them or teach them. They need you to see them, to accept them, to meet them exactly where they are with kindness and understanding. When you practice this with yourself, you naturally extend it to others. But here's something important. Not everyone will appreciate your transformation. As you become more centered, more authentic, more boundaried, some people in your life might resist the changes. The friend who used to bond with you over complaining might feel left out when you stop engaging in gossip. The family member who relied on your people-pleasing might get upset when you start honoring your own needs. This is normal, and it's not your job to manage other people's discomfort with your growth. My friend Lisa experienced this when she started setting healthy boundaries with her mother, who had always been overly critical and demanding. I stopped defending myself when she criticized me and started saying things like, "I can see you're upset," or "I'll consider your opinion," Lisa explained. I stopped dropping everything to rush over whenever she called with a crisis. Her mother was not happy about these changes. She accused me of becoming cold, of not caring about family anymore, of thinking I was better than everyone else. Lisa's first instinct was to go back to the old patterns to keep the peace. But her spiritual practice had taught her something crucial. You can love someone without enabling their unconscious behavior. "I kept showing up with love," she said, "but I stopped showing up with compliance. I could be caring without being controlled." Eventually, her relationship with her mother improved. Not because her mother changed her behavior, but because Lisa stopped taking her mother's emotions as personal attacks and started seeing them as her mother's own inner struggle. When I stopped being reactive, she had space to be different too, Lisa realized. My peace gave her permission to find her own peace. This is one of the most challenging aspects of integration, staying centered in your own growth while allowing others to be wherever they are in theirs. You can't force anyone else to wake up, but you can refuse to fall asleep to your own wisdom just to make others comfortable. Let me share something practical about maintaining your practice when life gets overwhelming. The biggest mistake people make is thinking they need perfect conditions to practice. They wait for a calm morning, a quiet space, enough time to do it right. Meanwhile, life keeps happening. Kids get sick, work gets crazy, relationships get complicated. Real practice happens in the cracks and margins of an imperfect life. My friend Tom figured this out when he became a single dad to twin toddlers. His ex-wife had been the primary caregiver, and suddenly he was managing two exhausted, confused 2-year-olds while trying to maintain his job and his sanity. "I couldn't sit for 20 minutes of meditation anymore," he told me. "Some days, I couldn't even find 2 minutes alone." So Tom got creative. He turned diaper changes into mindfulness practice, focusing completely on the task at hand, instead of letting his mind race to his to-do list. He practiced loving-kindness meditation while pushing the stroller around the neighborhood. He used nap time, not to catch up on work, but to sit quietly for just 5 minutes and breathe. "I realized that meditation isn't about the cushion," he said. "It's about the quality of attention I bring to whatever I'm doing." Tom's children began to settle too. "When Daddy was fully present with us, we felt safer," his daughter told him years later. "Even when everything was changing, you were like our steady place." Your practice doesn't need to look like anyone else's practice. It needs to fit into your actual life, with your actual responsibilities, in your actual circumstances. Maybe your meditation is 3 conscious breaths before getting out of bed. Maybe it's mindful walking from your car to your office. Maybe it's pausing before you speak in difficult conversations. Maybe it's silently wishing well for every person you encounter during your day. The form doesn't matter. The consistency does. Here's what I've learned about sustaining spiritual practice over the long term. It's not about discipline. It's about love. When practice feels like one more thing you should do, it becomes a burden. When practice feels like coming home to yourself, it becomes a refuge. I used to force myself to meditate because I thought good spiritual people meditated every day. I would sit there watching the clock, checking off my spiritual to-do list, feeling virtuous but not particularly nourished. Then, I started approaching practice as self-care rather than self-improvement. Instead of asking, "Am I doing this right?" I started asking, "What do I need right now to feel more centered, more connected, more at peace?" Some days that was sitting quietly with my breath. Some days it was walking in nature. Some days it was writing in my journal or calling a friend who always made me feel understood. Some days it was taking a nap because I needed rest more than I needed another spiritual practice. When I stopped trying to be a perfect practitioner and started being a compassionate one, my practice became sustainable. It became something I wanted to do rather than something I had to do. This shift from discipline to devotion changes everything. You start practicing not because you're trying to become someone else, but because you want to honor who you already are. Let me tell you about the most important discovery I've made in years of spiritual practice. You are not working towards some future state of enlightenment. You are uncovering the enlightenment that is your natural state right now. Every moment of presence, every act of kindness, every conscious breath is not building towards some future awakening. Every prizing, it is awakening itself, happening right now. I realized this on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. I was washing dishes after dinner, completely absorbed in the warm water, the soap bubbles, the simple rhythm of cleaning. For no reason at all, I felt overwhelmingly grateful for hot water, for dishes to wash, for hands that could work, for this simple human life. Nothing special had happened. I hadn't achieved anything or resolved any problems or had any profound insights. I had just been fully present for something utterly mundane, and in that presence, I touched something eternal. That's when I understood, this is it. This ordinary moment, fully experienced, is what all the spiritual books and teachers and practices are pointing toward. Not some perfect future self, but this imperfect present self, awake to the miracle of being alive. You don't need to wait until you're more evolved or more disciplined or more anything to access the peace you're seeking. It's available right now, in this breath, in this moment, exactly as you are. Your spiritual journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself, the self that has always been wise, compassionate, and whole underneath all the conditioning and fear and learned patterns of separation. Every practice we've explored together, mindful attention, loving kindness, emotional awareness, the sacred pause, seeing the divine in others, these are all just ways of remembering what you have never actually forgotten. The light we've been talking about isn't something you need to find or create or earn. It's something you are. It's the awareness reading these words right now. It's the consciousness that has been present through every experience of your life. It's the love that keeps your heart beating and your breath flowing. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you recognize this light in yourself, the more you see it everywhere else. In your family members, even when they're driving you crazy. In strangers on the street. In people who disagree with you. In the cashier having a bad day. In the neighbor whose music is too loud. Everyone is this same light, having different experiences, wearing different costumes, playing different roles. When you see from this perspective, judgment transforms into curiosity. Separation melts into connection. Fear dissolves into love. This is what integration ultimately means, living from the recognition that there is only one thing happening here, consciousness, knowing itself through countless forms, love exploring itself through infinite relationships, peace expressing itself through every moment of existence. You are not separate from this cosmic dance. You are not an observer of life. You are life itself, becoming aware of its own beauty and mystery and sacred ordinariness. As we near the end of our journey together, I want to leave you with this. You have everything you need to live with greater peace, wisdom, and love. Not someday, not after you perfect your practice, or resolve your problems, or become more spiritual. Right now. The person who started listening to this story and the person receiving these words are the same person, but something has shifted. Not because you've learned something new, but because you've remembered something ancient. Something that was never actually lost, only temporarily forgotten. Your heart knows the way home. It always has. These practices are just ways of clearing away the obstacles to following that knowing. Trust yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Remember that awakening is not an achievement but a recognition, not a destination but a way of traveling. Every moment offers you a fresh opportunity to choose consciousness over reactivity, love over fear, presence over distraction. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to keep choosing, moment by moment, breath by breath. The light that you are is needed in this world. Your particular way of being conscious, your unique expression of love, your specific contribution to the healing of our collective wounds, SI, these gifts can only come through you. So live them. Share them. Let them overflow from your daily practice into every relationship, every interaction, every ordinary moment that makes up your extraordinary human life. The heart's return home isn't a journey you take once. It's a journey you take every day, every moment, every time you remember that you have never actually left home. You have only dreamed you were somewhere else. Welcome back. You are exactly where you belong. And now, dear friend, as our journey together draws to a close, I want you to take a moment to notice something beautiful. You are not the same person who began listening hours ago. Something has shifted, hasn't it? Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but quietly, gently, like morning light, slowly filling a room. You may not even be able to name what's different, but you can feel it. That feeling is your heart recognizing itself. Your soul remembering what it has always known but had temporarily forgotten, in the busyness of living, in the noise of endless doing, in the forgetting that comes from being human, in a world that often feels disconnected from the sacred. Let yourself sink a little deeper now. Whether you're lying down or sitting, whether your eyes are open or closed, allow your body to fully relax. Feel the weight of these hours settling into your bones, not as tiredness, but as the deep satisfaction that comes from time well spent, wisdom well received, love well absorbed. We have walked together through so many doorways of understanding. We've explored the invisible backpacks we carry and learned to set them down. We've discovered how to welcome difficult emotions as honored guests rather than unwanted intruders. We've remembered that happiness isn't something we chase, but something we uncover when we stop running. We've listened to the wisdom of the heart, that gentle compass that always knows the way home. We've learned to find peace, not by avoiding storms, but by remembering that we are the vast sky that can hold any weather. We've practiced the sacred pause, that magical space between what happens to us and how we respond. We've seen how every person we meet is both our teacher and our reflection. How every difficult situation is an invitation to discover how resilient and wise and loving we actually are. How every ordinary moment is already holy if we have eyes to see it. Most importantly, we've remembered that you are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not lost and in need of finding. You are not empty and in need of filling. You are already whole, already home, already exactly what this world needs. The practices we've shared, the mindful breathing, the loving self-talk, the compassionate listening, the conscious responding, these are not tasks to add to your to-do list. They are invitations to return again and again to the truth of who you are, underneath all the roles you play and stories you tell and struggles you face. Some nights, you will remember this truth easily. You'll breathe consciously and feel immediately connected to peace. You'll speak to yourself with kindness and feel your heart soften. You'll look at the people in your life and see their perfect imperfection with compassion. Other nights, you'll forget completely. You'll react from old patterns, speak harshly to yourself, feel disconnected from love and wisdom and peace. And that's okay too. Forgetting is part of remembering. Getting lost is part of finding your way home. On those nights when you forget, you can return here. To this voice, these words, this gentle reminder that you are so much more than your worst moments, your biggest fears, your deepest wounds. You can always come back to the breath that is breathing you, the awareness that is aware of all your experiences, the love that is your deepest nature. I think of this recording as a letter from your wisest self to your struggling self. A message from the part of you that always remembers to the part of you that sometimes forgets. A love note from your soul to your tired human heart. Whenever you need to remember, you can return here. Let these words wash over you like warm water, like gentle rain, like the unconditional love you received before you even knew what love was. Let them remind you of what you've always known but sometimes forget. You are held, you are loved, You belong. Feel the community of all the other hearts that have listened to these words, seeking what you are seeking, longing for what you are longing for. You are part of an invisible web of consciousness, connected to every person who has ever felt lost and found their way home, who has ever felt broken and discovered their wholeness, who has ever felt alone and remembered their connection to all of life. Right now, someone across the world is breathing the same wish you are breathing, the wish to be at peace, to be free from unnecessary suffering, to remember their own goodness. That person could be in Tokyo, or London, or Sao Paulo, or the apartment next door. Distance doesn't matter when hearts are connected. As you prepare for sleep, or simply for rest, or for whatever comes next in your day, carry this knowing with you. Everything you've recognized tonight lives within you always. The peace, the wisdom, the love, the capacity for presence and compassion and conscious choice and Nesten. These are not temporary experiences you've borrowed. They are permanent qualities you've uncovered. Tomorrow, when you wake, the world will present its usual mixture of beauty and challenge, joy and difficulty, clarity and confusion. You will have opportunities to practice what we've explored together. Moments to pause before reacting. Chances to choose kindness over judgment. Invitations to remember that everyone you meet is doing their best with the resources they have. You won't do it perfectly. You'll forget, react, slip back into old patterns. And when you do, you can be gentle with yourself, the way you would be gentle with a dear friend who is learning something difficult and important. This is how transformation actually happens, not through perfect performance, but through imperfect practice, held in an embrace of self-compassion. Your breath is slowing now, isn't it? Your body is settling, your mind is quieting, your heart is opening to the rest that has been calling you all day. Let yourself sink into that rest fully, completely, without reservation. You have done something sacred tonight. You have listened with your whole being. You have allowed wisdom to touch you. You have remembered, even if just for moments, your own true nature. This is holy work, this journey home to yourself. As the silence grows around these final words, know that you are deeply loved, exactly as you are. Know that your life has meaning and purpose, even when it doesn't feel that way. Know that every step you take, every breath you breathe, every act of kindness you offer is contributing to the healing of our world. The ancient blessing I leave you with is this: may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be at peace. May you be free from all suffering. May you always remember the love that you are, even when the world forgets to remind you. And may you rest now in the deepest knowing of your heart. You are already home. You have always been home. You have never actually left home. Tonight, you simply remembered the way back to what was never lost. Sleep well, beautiful soul. The universe is conspiring in your favor. Love is holding you through all things, and tomorrow offers 1,000 new opportunities to practice being the magnificent being you already are. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for your openness, your courage, your willingness to remember. Thank you for being exactly who you are. Sweet dreams.